I created a Lego Thriller video over a year ago, and within that time, it's reached 300 views to 750,000. So I thought, why not make a series out of it? The idea came from the beginning of 2023, where I was rewatching my first ever stop frame animation, a Lego Thriller music video. And I thought, what if I could create the best version possible of this, learning a whole new set of software and creating one of those videos that inspired me as a kid and got me into filmmaking originally. So I got started. Now, in order to make this, I needed a goal. Halloween seemed best fit with a time frame of 4 months. While I had experience in film, I had no prior experience in animation software. I decided to break down my plan into segments: research and development, also known as R&D, software and resources, creating the elements, animating, and editing the final version. For this chapter, we'll go into R&D. Now, the original Lego animations made back in the day were all made from a physical camera. You set up your scene with a tripod and start animating, taking a photo of each movement, whether that be for the Lego characters or the scene. And each second in a film is 24 frames per second as a standard. But now, since the Lego movie was made, artists discovered that they could create these animations without using a camera and instead on a computer, which is how I'm planning to do it. I did think to create it by stock frame animation, but I didn't have a studio or space for this. Although my flat would have been nice, you need an area where you can control the light and environment to save it from changing. Stock frame animations also take a lot longer, with 1 minute taking several days or weeks depending on experience. That's why on a software you can access the information on multiple devices. Change it wherever and whenever you like, making it more efficient. I made sure before I even started the project that I was aware of each element of the process, or as VFX artists would state, each element of the pipeline. I mention this in VFX terms as this is the line of work I had previously done on feature films for the likes of HBO, Disney, and a number of independent feature films I'm proud of. An animation pipeline is like a production assembly line for creating the animation. It's the process of turning an idea into visuals on screen. It starts with concept art and pre-visualization to plan the look and feel, followed by 3D modeling, animation, and texturing to create the assets. Then comes lighting and rendering to bring those assets to life, and finally compositing, where all the elements like effects and environments are blended together seamlessly. Every stage relies on teamwork, although for this I'm a one-man band, specialised tools and constant feedback to ensure the final visuals are polished and look to their best ability. Each element of the pipeline will be explained in this video, so don't worry if you don't understand everything straight away. In total, I used about 100 gigabytes, so make sure you have around about that if you want to make a similar animation. To confirm again, this was all self-taught. I had not much experience in animation prior, although I knew how the process worked. Majority of my time led to watching YouTube videos, some of the likes of Iliano, Lego Media G, and Owenator Productions. So I can't thank you guys enough, because without you guys, I wouldn't have been able to create. I had to find a software. There were many paid softwares out there, such as Mira and Nuke, which are industry standard, but I thought to be on a creator's level and start with Blender. It was a free, easy access, everyone kind of used software, which was great to start and learn. We then had to look at the textures and models to add. And for those of you who don't know what textures and models are any object, character, or scene you can add to a software. This can be created by yourself or imported by presets you have online. And then there's also textures. Textures are the skin or color you can add to these scenes or objects. Say for a 3D circle, we add textures onto this to give it a difference rather than being its plain grey. So now making a schedule and timeline. As mentioned before, I gave myself 4 months to do the whole project. I would have taken longer, but I realised that October would have been exactly 10 years since I created my first version. I'm also quite pedantic, so if I wanted to make it to perfection, it would have taken far longer. I also gave myself 2 hours a week to shoot content for socials to share my progress. These are still on my channel, but funnily enough, it didn't get as much traction. It was a good way of formally understanding the process myself as well. I filmed with the odd friend here and there, so not only was I making content learning to animate, I also had a full-time job too. So I can't recommend putting time in the planning stages for good time management, because I don't know what I would have done if I wasn't organised. Now, with a plan, schedule, and having done enough R&D that I've watched about 100 YouTube videos, we are looking to gather the resources to speed characters, scenes, and objects, all for the software allow us to make the animation. With Blender set up, the next step is gathering the assets. In simple terms, an asset is any digital element used in the scene. 3D models, textures, animations, lighting, and even sound effects. Everything you see on screen, from the Lego characters to the background environment, is made up of assets. and I didn't really know how to create models in Blender, especially Lego bricks or characters, so this seemed a bit of a tricky one. Luckily, I found a site called Mechabricks where you could create your own sets or Lego figures. So it was essentially building Lego but online, using any blocks or pieces in any way you want. So it was like creating a digital version of Lego. If you really had the amount of time you could build a world in there, I really felt like a kid again with this. There's a whole library of these, so I recommend if you want to make the other Lego animations, definitely check it out. There were many pre-created sets, which made an interesting one, as I could either create all of the models myself, which used a lot to schedule, or I could use pre-created ones. I decided to create most of it myself though, other than 1 or 2 sets, to match it exactly on how I wanted to edit and create it basically. I built most of the sets, whether that be the cinema, house at the end, or even the graveyard. These were all complex in their own way. I basically looked at every frame of the music video over and over again, using the video as my only point of reference. I used a bit of my own creative input as well, so these aren't 100% accurate, but we'll be able to hide it once we begin shooting it. You can also look at the real life locations, which I did, some are really cool. Especially the actual house and the fact that they shot Thriller video on Boulevard. There's a whole community that do the real life performance of Thriller every year. This was in New York, however. Getting distracted. Anyway, of course there was the main Thriller street where the dance and chorus happens. I didn't have time for this, so I have a massive thank you to some of the creators on Mechabricks. And I'm going to spell this, if I can spell this correctly. ASI 2008 and Bob Velocity. These guys were a massive help in making this street. I also used this street as a basis for the long walking scene between MJ and Orla, multiplying this and making sure they'd match completely. And with the characters, I built these from scratch. MJ using multiple Lego hairstyles to get it right as seen in the film, and for Orla Ray, I essentially created lots of colours for her outfit, matching the video. You coming out?
I couldn't think of what to do.
So this is Rupert, one of my old school friends. He knew about me making these videos and wanted to get involved, although we couldn't think of how to include him. Have you thought about an idea? You want to feature in it, don't you?
Yeah, for sure. I'm just thinking. You can't just put me on the spot. Oh,
outside, in the cold. You know that bucket?
Yeah. You can tip it over me. What a bunch of dirty water. Nah,
Go on.
No, it's not funny enough. Aye.
Is it ice? Well,
Should we do the ice bucket challenge?
Yeah.
Should I just do it? I mean, you did the can thing, so I'll do that.
Yeah? So Rupert mentions Cannes here. For context, we went to Cannes Film Festival last year and we both wanted to watch the premiere of a new film, but I only had 1 ticket. While Rupert won fair and square, he said he'd give me the ticket if I jumped into a harbour, fully clothed, the night before. There wasn't a towel and we were about 50-minute drive. To watch the film was very much worth it, but for this, I wasn't really sure what he was getting out of it. But we did it anyway.
The sets were the hardest part, where it took about 2 months to actually form all of these. I decided to create individual areas, like the graveyard separate to the street. Similar to how they shoot films, this way I could see each set on a separate file, saving time and space. As if I were to have all the sets together, it would take ages to animate due to the file being so big. It took awfully long time to create these sets as it was adding brick by brick. It took so long that it was pushing into the calendar time we had for animating, which was cause for concern. Being 2 weeks late, meaning less animating time. I did build the scenes for the introduction of the video, you know, the one where Michael turns into a werewolf, but realised with the length of that scene being a total of 4 minutes, I wouldn't put off being able to create the actual song part in time. Very sad, but if you ever want me to animate for this Halloween, let me know.
In total, I built 17 scenes, including the introduction ones which we didn't end up using. I created 8 groups of models. These were MJ, Orla and all of the zombies, creating enough variety so there wasn't any copies which you could notice in the film.
Okay, one more time.
Now, animation is an interesting one. It's essentially like a digital film set. You have your actors, your sets, your lenses, your focus, your millimeters, and it's all quite detailed, really. What's that?
Want to build that?
Sure. To start this off, I first made reference to the actual video where I counted every shot in Thriller. Yeah, it took an awful long time, 143 shots. I wanted to match the movement exactly to pay tribute to. Funnily enough, there has been other versions made of Michael Jackson's Thriller since this video has come out. It's been really cool to see. Completely not one of the reasons why I did it, to make sure YouTube would know this was actually my video. Completely not. Model demands a rig and, in essence, a skeleton for the animation. Now, a rig in animation is essentially the skeleton or body layout you have to move around an object. Say you're moving a human, a rig would look something similar to a skeleton, but you could have multiple rigs for one object. Say, as well as the bones, you could also control the skin, mouth, limbs, all sorts. You can either create these or use presets, and to be honest, I had no idea what a Lego rig would look like. I did try and play around with AI on this. There was this software called OpenAI where it created a model rig as well as the movement. It worked out alright, but I struggled converting the rig to a Lego man, as the rig was my skeleton, so it ended up looking distorted. We use this Lego rig for all the characters, and it was provided by Epic Fig Rig. This rig, although basic, was the best one for a Lego figure. Although it made things harder in certain parts in the dance move as MJ moved around in such a variety of ways. Similar to stop frame animations, we had to move the models from one point to another. However, the technology we were using, we were able to create keyframes. So essentially from one of the beginning points to the end point, and then saving the hassle for any motion in between. However, I could manipulate the keyframes to make the action smoother and less rigid. Believe me, there was a lot of keyframes throughout this whole video. Do you want a hand? Is there a guide? Oh, we need glue. The first scene we decided to animate was actually the first one in the actual music video, and this wasn't the wolf scene at the very beginning. This was the scene to when the music started. The cinema was tricky as I had to implement neon lights, so this was one of the hardest learning curves per se. For the lighting, I learned you can create actual light objects which were directional. So for a moonlight, I had the light from very far away. These were quite tricky things to learn, but yeah, I got the hang of it eventually. For the animation, the hardest part was the spinning of the characters. So like MJ, as you'll see in the film, MJ spins a lot and the heads follow around accordingly, so it was ensuring that there was consistent interaction throughout between the characters too. In short, I probably spent around 60 hours in total to animate everything. It was difficult to learn at first, but once you get the hang of it, I got a lot quicker. You can also play back the animation as many times as you want, which was great. I even put another screen next to my computer and played the actual video alongside to see if it was in the right direction. As well as animating the models, there was also the cameras. On Blender, to make each shot, you either need to animate the camera to make it move, or you add an additional camera. In my case, I decided to use 10 cameras for each scene and then animate the ones which weren't being used to their next position. This sounds like more of a difficult way of doing things, but I found it easier as we used each camera for a different size of lens. Most of the time I used a 50mm, 30mm, 75mm and the odd zoom lens for long takes. While the rig provided movement for the body, what I didn't factor in was the face, to which had a complete separate rig. This was the only thing I paid for, which was around £10. So yeah, guys, essentially it's a £10 budget for the whole thing, minus the amount of hours I took to make it up, to put it all together. The face was one of the hardest parts as I needed to make sure it appeared believable. I fortunately had reference to the actual video on the software while I was animating to match it frame by frame, so this was solvable, but something I did at the end of all the animations to make it easier.
We did it!
Well done.
Woo! Ow!
Now we're on the final edit of the film. This was probably the most time consuming of them all. I had 2 weeks left before Halloween and nothing yet rendered. In order to move an animation outside of Blender, you need to render all the images of the animation. For those who don't know what rendering is the process of generating the final image or animation from a 3D scene. It takes all the elements and converts them into a high quality visual output. Like a stop frame animation, you require to take 24 photos to make a second. In this case, we need to render 24 images from our animation every second. I did the maths for this, and the total film would require 19,728 frames, which we definitely didn't have time for. Rendering speeds depends on your type of computer. While although I did build my own, the GPU and CPU were about 5 years old. A GPU is a graphics processing unit, essentially the high quality you can play back videos in. The CPU is a central processing unit. This is the core of the computer and essentially all the operations and the processing power of your computer. You could render this off your GPU or CPU. I decided to render this off my CPU as I had about 12 cores for my computer. It was a method of trial and error for getting the right render settings. I'd recommend watching tutorials by Kai on YouTube. They were really informative and really helped. After countless crashes and waking up in the middle of the night to make sure these shots were being processed, I managed to render the first scene, which was the cinema scene, and it was probably one of the most satisfying things seeing a full animation rendered. But this took 3 days to do, which meant I wouldn't have enough time to process everything. Luckily, I had a few friends in the industry who could help. Whilst I was posting short content, Alex, the VFX supervisor, advised a quicker way of processing the frames. which was by changing the frames per second from 24 to 12 and then time stretching this from 100 to 50. This way it wouldn't drastically change the look, but in fact give a more film Lego style. There was then Mark, a VFX compositor who I got to meet in recent months. He heard the idea and wanted to get involved, so offered the computer to do the rendering. We had countless calls on making sure our settings matched, and I can't thank him enough. If it wasn't for both of these, I wouldn't have been able to create this. Finally, after all the scenes were rendered, we put it into Premiere Pro, we added the credits as well as the yellow eyes MJ has at the end, and yeah, we uploaded it on Halloween Day 2023. I created a goal of not only attempting to recreate my 10-year-old animation, but also to learn far more into the animation department. You're probably wondering that, although I've created it, it's almost been 2 years since it's uploaded, so why now? Funny enough, when I first posted it, it only reached about 300 views, but coming up to last Halloween, it went from 300 to 10,000, then 100,000, and now, as of the 23rd of March 2025, it's reached 1 million views, which is absolutely crazy. Yeah, my childhood self would probably be jumping up and down right now. It's always been a dream to reach that amount, and to think I've actually done that is crazy. And I know this video is long overdue, and it's taken quite some time to create this edit and actually have the nerves to post it, but with the crazy feedback I've had from everyone on that video, there's no excuse now. I just gotta do it. I've got a few more ideas in mind for future videos, but yeah, I suppose stay tuned and subscribe.